Everyone says this movie is genius. And it shows me that it's like these days people are drawn to mediocrity. There are those really horrible shitty movies like Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, but even Jurassic World and Kong, and people are actually able to watch them and make themselves believe that these are okay. And they praise this to the sky, the mediocre movies like Moonlight and Arrival. The reason could be that to recognize true value in a movie, to really get into it and think about it, is actually a lot of work. And the audience just gets lazier and lazier. We don't want to think and to learn and to find that big insights about the world and ourselves. So we try to convince ourselves that the movies that are easy to enjoy are actually genius. And this way we can feel that watching them makes us smart and intelligent. This concerns me because in the meantime the real masterpieces like Nocturnal Animals and Silence are drowned at the box offices and they are considered failures. I know it needs tremendous amount of work to make a movie, even the worst movie. So I'm always happy to hear that someone likes a movie, even if I don't personally like that movie myself. So I'm happy you like Arrival. But I tell my problems with it anyway because I'd like to encourage people to be critical when they watch movies. Search for the real good ones and support them with the cost of the movie ticket. Only this way will the cinemas be filled with movies like Her and Room, and not like 50 Shades of Shit. Actually, I wrote this review 3 years ago, that's why my references are quite old. And things got much worse since then. I'll make a video about it soon, but now let's get back to Arrival. I want to tell you that I liked a lot of things about Arrival, like how it shows very realistically that if aliens will arrive, if they don't attack us immediately, what kind of problems should humankind face? How hard would it be to make contact, to communicate with them, and to deal with international disagreement? I like that the movie shows all this through a single character's eyes, and even if she will be the key to the whole conflict, at the beginning she's just a complete outsider. So it's easy for us to relate to her and to experience the events through her. The tension builds up nicely, mostly thanks to the cutscenes that we believe are Louis's memories. So the movie holds up our attention and curiosity well for a long time. The main character's personality makes it easy for us to care for her. With this montage at the beginning of the film when we see the birth and loss of her daughter, in this short time we can build up a real connection to her. So this beginning was very effective, but somehow this was my first problem, that it was a little bit too effective, a little bit too close to being forced. It absolutely might be just my opinion, and I know the reason for it. As soon as I heard the music from Max Richter, The Nature of Daylight, under the beautifully shot close-ups, I knew right away that the movie wanted me to feel higher than high emotions. And I know this because I felt higher than high emotions when I first heard this music in the movie Disconnected, and even the second time when I heard it in Shutter Island. So that's why it was harder for me to live out the same emotions when Arrival shoved this music in my face again. I consciously realized what the movie wanted from me, and it made it more difficult. So this can be a danger when the creators choose a music that was already used in other movies, but I guess if you never heard it, then this wasn't a problem for you. So my next issue with the film that the two main ideas just didn't work for me. The first is that if a person learns the language of the aliens, then that person will experience time like them, non-linear. The movie slowly shows how Louis slowly acquires this ability, and this is an interesting idea. I just think it's too unbelievable. That is a nice and grounded idea, that if we learn a new language well enough, then we learn a new way of thinking with it too. Because language is a system that our mind can function in. And in a different system, new ways become possible. But to say that its effect can be that we perceive time differently, that's just a huge bullshit wrapped in a shiny surface. I think it's essential, especially in science fiction, that the supernatural elements would be believable and scientifically grounded, at least theoretically. They can't just throw a big bullshit at us and expect us to believe just because they say it's science fiction. I think this movie tries to do just that. It really is interesting that we see the scenes in the beginning with Louis's daughter and we think it's her past. And then later in the movie they get a new meaning when we find out it happens after the alien conflict. I think the problem here is that the realization arrives too soon. We suspect it quite soon.
The show is called Mommy and Daddy Talk to Animals.
And when the girl talks about her father, it becomes certainty.
If you want science, call your father.
The biggest problem that with this soon realization, the fault of this construction is much bigger than the benefit of it. Because with this we find out the future. We know that Ian and Louis are gonna get married and they will have a daughter who will die. And we know exactly that the Earth won't be destroyed. So everything that happens in the present time in the movie just loses all tension and also our interest in it. And the problem is even clearer now that we saw Tenet. Because that movie tells a similar story in a way that the heroes have to fight against time and against things in the past to affect the present and the future, and they don't know if they can change anything that has been done or not. That movie asks us to not try to understand, just feel it, but it actually does quite a lot of explaining. The protagonist asks this very question: why do we struggle if us being here is the proof that we succeed? In that movie, Neil explains that this optimistic view is only one possibility, and it doesn't mean that they don't have to choose and act. He does that exactly at the end when he goes back even after they won. In that scene we know his fate, and this fills the previous scenes with a new understanding, a new tragedy and drama, a new insight. In Tenet, Neil doesn't know his fate, only we and the protagonist do. But in Arrival, Louis looks into the future and uses that information to solve the conflict. The movie wants us to worry about Louis if she's gonna stop the war from happening or not, but why would we if we know she succeeds? I think a movie makes an impact when the hero has to face a dilemma. She has to make a choice and there's a chance that she will fail or even make things worse. But in this movie, the hero knows exactly the effect of her actions and she just has to go through with them. That's not a dilemma. Although there was one little moving bit in this final showdown. It was when Ian faced the guns to protect Louis. That's when I realized that their relationship was far more interesting for me than the made-up conflict with the aliens that I knew exactly how will play out. To me, this was a real conflict. The knowledge of an unborn child who will be able to live only a few years, and even that she'll live in sickness. How can a couple face this knowledge and the possibility of a choice to change the future or not? This is the really interesting stuff, and the movie doesn't show enough of it. There's one little mention about Ian getting angry at Lois because she didn't leave him a choice.
I told him something that he wasn't ready to hear.
And after he got to know the truth, he couldn't stay with them.
And he said I made the wrong choice.
Why couldn't we see these things? We see when Louis hugs Ian in the present and in the future time, and she makes the choice to begin this path with him that will lead to the birth and death of her child. This could be a beautiful dilemma, but only if there really is a choice. And I wasn't sure it was. The movie gave too many signs that the future was set in stone. The Chinese general in the future remembered their conversation as it happened in the present time. And the aliens said that we need to be able to see the future to help them in 3,000 years. Not possibilities of the future, the future. So with this setup, I couldn't feel the weight of Louis's choice well enough. Why didn't she tell Ian about the future she knew? And why she told him when she did? And how and why he decided then not to stay with them? That's heavy and interesting stuff that we never get to see. We get this conversation instead.
It has to do with a really rare disease.
First of all, how can you say something like that to your kid? And secondly, do you think that's a fulfilling explanation that can close a conversation? Is this really how they wrote this? I think this movie is far from being genius. And there's one more big question that the movie just forgets to talk about. So if we accept this concept about the alien language and seeing the future, do you really think it's a good idea to write a textbook about it so everyone in the whole world could learn this? What if someone decides that he didn't like his future and would like to change it? Is it even possible? And what if everyone wants to change the future? What if someone sees a really horrible thing in the future, so he does an even more horrible thing to try to change it? And what if, in the fear of the future, people set a course of events that would lead to the destruction of the planet? And if they can't change anything, then why give humanity this ability? Is it actually a blessing or a curse? These are big questions, but the movie doesn't care about them. It leaves this situation as a comforting ending. I don't think that's so genius. So I think Arrival takes a really interesting base idea, then it tries to make a big bullshit look like an interesting scientific idea. Then with this structure, it takes away all tension from the second half of the movie, while it doesn't even try to answer all the really interesting questions it raises. But that's just what I think. I would be really happy to hear what you think about the movie and about my opinion too.